Okay, people, in this video, we are going to see basically the development of chapter number 11. In chapter 11, there is a problem with, do you remember that in the previous video, Atticus started defending Tom Robinson, who was accused of raping a woman. So in this case, some people from the village started like criticizing Atticus because of this, and they saw and told many things to the children, and they told many things to him, and they were like giving really bad comments about him. So Mrs. Dubose is one of them, and she was a neighbor, an old neighbor who lives very close to them, and she was very angry with Atticus because she says that Atticus is defending Thrush, making reference to Tom Robinson. So by this point, Jem, he got really angry, and he wanted to say he said something to Mr. Walsh, but then Atticus tell him not to do this, but Mr. Walsh continued telling these things to Atticus, and Jem, he got really angry. So what Jem did, he was that he took basically like a bat right from Scott, and then he destroys Mrs. Duvos's camellia bushes. So all the plants, all the flowers were destroyed by Jem. So Mr. Boss was really angry, and the punishment that Jem had was that every day he had to go to read to Mrs. Dubose. And in this case, Atticus was telling him to please have respect for Mrs. Dubose because she was an old lady and she deserves respect because of that. So in this case, Scott was always with Jem. He used to go to the punishment sessions, right, where Jem was reading to the woman, and then the majority of the sessions were even a little bit longer. But little by little, the kids were understanding the woman, and they were trying to understanding her. At some point, after the punishment finished, Mrs. Dubose unfortunately died, and basically she died because she was addicted to morphine, and those were like one of the problems that she had. I don't know if you remember that in the video that I made about the 30s, the year 30s, there was a problem with the recession, right? The majority of the people, they had to use morphine to relieve their pains and their diseases, and the morphine was the one who was helping them a lot, like in the movie, like in the book Sons and Lovers, when the mother, um basically the mother of Paul, she dies of an overdose of morphine, right? So morphine was this medicine that helped people to release their pain. So this woman died, and because of her addiction, right? And the reading sessions helped, right, to her that through this reading she could forget about her addiction about morphine. And at the end, the woman, Miss Dubose, she feels like kind of appreciation to Jem because he was reading to her, and she gave him a present before she died, and she gave Atticus a box that was for Jem, and inside of the box was a single white camellia. That was the present that Miss Dubose gave to Jem. So in chapter number 12, basically now Jem is 12 years old, and he doesn't like to be followed by Scott. So in this case, Scott feels kind of sad and bored, and she's waiting for the summer to come because when summer arrives, Deal also arrives. But in this case, Deal is not going to come back. He's not going to come because he just sends a letter to them, and in the letter he explains that his mom has gotten married with a new guy, and he says that he has a new father, and that the guy is really happy, really nice with him, and that his new father is gonna take him fishing, right? And that's why Deal decides not to come this summer to visit them. So now Scott is alone and trying to follow Deal, Gem, I'm sorry. So to make the problem a little bit bigger, the legislate asked Atticus to go to the court like 2 times a week. So in this case, he is required to go to attend the sessions and to take care of this, the case of Tom Robinson. So Calpurnia is in charge of the house now, and Calpurnia decides to take the children to the colored church. It means to the African American church, and in there, the church they go there, and some people look at them like in a little discriminative way, but the majority of the people are very friendly. The name of the church is called the Purchase, the First Purchase, because this land or this church was bought by the first African American people, the first black people who were free, right? And they got the money to buy this church. So after this, right, the Calpurnia takes the kids to church, and there is a woman which is called Lula, and she like criticized Calpurnia for bringing the children to the church, but the majority of the congregation is generally friendly, and the pastor of the church is called Reverend Sykes, and he also welcomes them, right? In the church, they had a characteristic, since the majority of the African American people didn't have the chance or they didn't know how to read, they were just singing hymnals. And the congregation repeats the hymnals that Zibo, who is Calpurnia's oldest son, uh, was singing. And the job that Zibo has in the city was that the garbage collector. So Zibo was Calpurnia's son, and he was the one in charge of making them singing and singing the psalms from the church. During the service, there is something that happened, and there is a woman that is part of the congregation whose name is Helen. Helen is Tom Robinson's wife, and the pastor or the reverend says that he has to make a collect for getting some money for giving to Helen and the children, because since Tom Robinson was accused of raping a woman, Helen didn't have also the chance to get a good job, so they were having problems with money. They were having some economical problems, so she had to pay some things, and she didn't have money. So the people from the church, they collected the money and they gave it to her. So after the service, Scott realizes that the one who was accusing Tom Robinson was Bob Ewell, and she started thinking, why are Ewell, or why do these people believe in the word of a Ewell? Because Ewells were considered like American trash or white trash. So she started thinking about this, and when the children they returned home from church, they found Aunt Alexandra that was there, who was there taking care of the house now. So in chapter number 13, Aunt Alexandra takes care of the house, and she says that the kids need like the female influence, like an influence of a woman, and even the people from Macon, they welcome Alexandra in a very good way because she's kind of fancy, she's very polite, and she's very proud of her family. She's very proud of the Finches, right? And she spends a lot of time talking to the families in Macon, and then the people make her feel really comfortable. And now she feels like in her house. By this time, she makes Scott cry because she starts criticizing the way Scott acts, and she starts criticizing the things she does, and also she believes that the kids need to have more like knowledge from the family, and she's gonna be the one in charge of giving them that knowledge. So this is what happens, or the most important things that happen in chapter number 13. In chapter number 14, there are some important things that happen. In this case, basically, uh, the trial of Tom Robinson starts, right, and draws closer. So the children, they like to listen to all the whispers that people say, to all the comments about the people, and they make their own thoughts about the situation, right? And out Alexandra, there is a problem that Scott, she liked to go to the church, to the first purchase. She liked to go to the church because the people were very friendly, and she liked the way in which they were singing, the way in which the services were held. So she liked that, and now Aunt Alexandra forbids that to Scott. She doesn't want her to go there anymore, and she gets very angry. And another situation that happens is that Aunt Alexandra attempts against Calpurnia. She says Atticus that he has to fire Calpurnia because she is like a bad influence for the kids, and Calpurnia is like not a good influence like in this way. But Atticus defends Calpurnia, and he says that Calpurnia is the one who helps him a lot in the house. So in that night, also Scott like has an argument with her aunt, and Jem asks Scott to apologize to her because Jem considers that it is not a good idea to be fighting with his aunt because they will lose in any situation. So Scott gets angry with Jem, and they start fighting. And while they are fighting in the house, Atticus enters the house and he separates them and he sends them to the rooms. In the rooms, while Scott was in her room, something strange happens. While she saw somebody in the house, there was somebody in the house, and in the bed especially. And later, Scott goes to Jem and shows what was happening. And when they saw, it was Dill inside of the house, beneath her bed. And the problem was that Deal escaped from his house, and he was inside of the house of them, just hidden because he didn't want anybody to see him. So Jem decides to tell his father about Deal, and he says, "Oh, sir, can I tell you something?" Because Jem is in the majority of the occasions he talked very respectfully to his father and says, "Sir, can I talk to you?" And in this case, he told to Atticus about Deal, right? And he says that then Deal confesses that he came back to them because the situation about his new father was fake. I mean, now his mom and his new dad, they didn't pay enough attention to him, and they didn't even take him fishing. So that's why he decides to escape from his house and to go to visit his friends. And he confesses that he took the Meridian train to Macon, and then he was like hidden in the train, and then he comes back to the house, right? So when Atticus sees Jem, he tells them that they have to give him food, and then Deal eats all the food right very fast, and also when they are done, they go to bed. The Deal goes to Jem's bed, and they decided to talk, and later to sleep. I'm sorry, and later he goes to Scott's bed, and then they start talking about many things, right? And they start having a good conversation about the things that they have already passed and the situations that they are suffering. So in chapter number 15, the trial is about to start, and then Tom Robinson is moved to Macomb jail. Uh, at this moment, Atticus knows about this and he realizes about this situation and he tells Alexandra. And then they have like a big argument with Alexandra, and they were fighting about the trial, about the things that the decisions that Atticus has made for defending Tom Robinson, and he tells him that Tom will bring a disgrace to the family name, because Aunt Alexandra was always protecting the family name. That was her issue, right? So then Atticus takes his card and he goes to the jail, right, to the town center, and he stays outside of the jail reading newspaper. So the kids they decide to follow him. The three kids, right, Jem, Scott, and Deal, they decide to follow him, and they go and see him. And then they see him from a distant place, and they decide not to disturb him, just to watch him. But in that moment, there were a group of men, right, and they demanded Atticus to move from the jail door because they wanted to kill Tom Robinson. But in that moment, Scott, she didn't want his father to be hurt, and she runs. She runs where the people were to help her father, and then the other kills, right? Jam and Deal follow her, and they were in front of Atticus. And then the other guys, they tell Atticus that he has 15 seconds to take the children away because they will take part in the situation. But this is what happens, and then basically Scott basically realizes that there was somebody over there that she knows, and it was Mr. Walter Cunningham, the father of his classmate, and he tells to say Walter, hey, right? So Mr. Cunningham is a little bit ashamed and tells Scott that he will say hello to his son, right? And then the people basically leave, right? And there is a man who is called Mr. Underwood, who is like the owner of the newspaper. He was from a distant place with a barrel of shotgun, and he was basically pointing the other guys, and he said Atticus that Atticus was covered because he was gonna help him if something really bad happened. And then after this situation, Atticus tells the children that they were not supposed to be there. That was a really dangerous place for them to be, and he decides to take the children to the house, to a safe place. So in chapter number 16, the trial from Tom Robinson begins, and all the people go to see, right? Miss Mori, the friend of the Finches, she says that she's not going to go there because when there is a trial like this in the city, it is very similar to a Roman carnival. That means that in the Roman times, right, in the ancient times when the Romans were the emperors, they make like all those like sacrifices of people. They kill people and they were like giving them life or not. So she says that this is very similar, so that's why she decides not to go there. Gemma, Scott, and Deal, they wait for the lunch time group to enter to the court, and they wait too much, and they all the seats are taken, and they go to the second floor to the balcony where all the black people were, and Mr. the Reverend, right, the Reverend Sides was over there, and he allows the kids to stay with them, and basically in the balcony, right? And then the Judge Taylor is a very controversial judge because he runs, right, his court in an informal manner, right? So he's not like so nice with the people, and especially with African American people. So in this case, this is like a similar place where the people were, right, the courts. So the people were in the balcony watching from a distant place all the situations that were happening. There is a guy that is prosecutor, Mr. Gilmer, question or ask Heck Tate. Heck Tate was the sheriff about the events that occurred in November 21st at the Ewell residence. When Tate arrived, Mayila was beaten and bruised. She accused Tom Robinson of rape. Atticus examines Heck, and who tells him that there was no doctor called to the Ewell home, and that all the bruises were concentrated in the right side of her face. And Bo Ewell takes a stand and Bo Ewell and his children leave behind the town garbage to the dump, right? The place where they live behind the dump in a very small place, in a very small house. Everything is covered by dump and by garbage, so everything is full of trash in the place where they live. So Mr. Ewell, he testifies, right, that on that night in question he was coming out of the woods with a load of kindling when he heard his daughter screaming, and then he took like the act about the situation, and when he reached the house he saw Tom Robinson raping his daughter. That was like the description of the situation from Mr. Ewell. And then Robinson was freed as Ewell entered to the house. Right? He ran away, and then Hecht, right, he checked on his daughter, and he ran for the sheriff, supposedly, right? So Atticus also asks Mrs. Ewell, uh, and he says, "Why you didn't call a doctor to check if Mayella was raped or not?" And Mr. Ewell says that it was too expensive, and it was not needed, right? That the sheriff had to believe in his word, right? Because he was a white guy and the other one was an African American guy. So and then Atticus asked, right, Bo Ewell to write his name, and the court realized that Mr. Ewell was a left-handed person. So in this case, Atticus says that if you are left-handed, when you hit somebody, you are gonna hit the right side of the face of the person. So that's why it is impossible that Tom Robinson hit Mayela, because Tom Robinson has a problem with the right hand. When he was a teenager, he like hurt his hand and he cannot use it very well. So this was the situation. So in chapter number 18, as the trial continues, the town, right, the people is glued. I mean, they don't want to go away because the trial between uh, Atticus, right, and the other guy was very intense. So the proceedings, and they didn't want it to wait until Mayela takes the stand, right? They wanted to listen to Mayela and to see her version of the story. So when she does, she was very terrified, right? She was scared, she was terrified because she was gonna talk in front of a lot of people. And she says that she called Tom Robinson that day inside of the fence and offered him a nickel, right, like a little penny, to break apart one old dresser. So to help him, right, to move this dresser and to break it. So once Tom Robinson was inside of the house, he raped her. She says that he looked at her and she started touching her, and then he raped her, right? He committed the act. So in this moment, Atticus started asking Mayela because it was his turn. And Mayela confesses that she has seven unhelpful younger siblings who don't do anything. And her father is a drunk guy, and she feels alone in the house. So she feels kind of alone. She wants companion. So that's why she asks people, right? In this case, Tom Robinson, to come and help. So in this case, she asks, right, why she puts, right, up a better why didn't she put a better fight? I mean, why didn't she fight against Tom Robinson? And then, where were your children, right? Your siblings, I'm sorry. So Atticus asked all of these things, right? If you have seven siblings, so where were they while Tom Robinson was in the house? So in this case, finally now Tom she says that physically performed the actions, right? And in this case, the man, right? In this case, Atticus says the jury that he couldn't do this. He couldn't do that because he was with the left hand destroyed, and Tom Robinson had his left hand destroyed in a quarantine when he was a child. So in this case, Atticus tries to make the people understand that hitting the woman with the left hand by Tom Robinson was impossible because he had it destroyed. So it means that Atticus was making people realize that it was Mr. Ewell Bow who hit Mayela because of something, and we will see this later. So Atticus pleads Mayela to admit that she was not raped and that her father beat her. He says, your father beat you and you were not raped by Tom Robinson. And she shouts to Atticus and she says that she is innocent, right? And that Tom Robinson raped her. So Mr. Underwood noticed the children in the balcony, and Jem tells the others, right, that we won't tell Atticus, right? So in this case, this man, Mr. Underwood, he saw them, and he was near to the blacks, but Jem tells him, please don't tell him, don't tell my father, right? So then the prosecution rests, right? There is a rest, there is a moment in which they rest, and Atticus called only one witness, which is Tom Robinson. And Tom Robinson enters to the jury to confess and to tell, right, what happened. So Tom testifies that he passed the Ewell house every day on his way to home, and Mayela always asked him to help her with chores, with anything. So Mayela was always telling me, please, can you come and help me with this and this and that? So he says that in one occasion he was asked to help to repair a door, but when he got into the door, into the house, the door was okay. It didn't have anything wrong. So with that, all the other children were gone. So there was nobody in the house. So Mayela called him just to see him right inside of the house. And in this case, Tom asks, "Where are your siblings?" Right? And Mayela tells him that she has saved money and she sent the kids for some ice cream. So I don't know if you remember in the previous chapter that Mayela said that she felt alone in the house. So in this case, she sent her siblings for some ice cream. So then she asked him to lift a box down from the dresser. And when she stepped into the chair, the woman, right, when he stepped into the chair, he was like in an up position. Mayela touched his leg. He touched like Tom Robinson's leg. And then Tom Robinson was scared, right? And he jumped down and she asked him to kiss her. So in this moment, in the version of Tom Robinson, he says that Mayela was desperate and he wanted to be kissed by Tom Robinson, and that's why he asked him to go every single day inside of the house until the moment in which she could have some enough money to send his siblings to buy some ice cream and to be alone with Tom Robinson. So as she struggled, right, Bo Ewell appeared and at the window, and then he threatened his daughter, and Tom fled. Right? Tom ran away, and then Mr. Ewell was with his daughter in the house, and according to Tom Robinson, this is what happened. That Mr. Ewell hits basically Mayela in the face. There is a guy who is called Link This. He's like the boss of Tom, and he stands up from the balcony from the courtroom and he declares that in 8 years of work, Tom has been a really good person and he has never had any problem. And then the Judge Taylor expels this for that intromission, let's say, from that for telling this thing right to the people. So he is expelled right from the courtroom. And then Mr. Gilmer, who is like the attorney, he cross-examines Tom and he asks right, and he asks him to admit that he was convicted for disorderly conduct, and even he thought disabled he's still strong, right? I mean, he make him say that even though he has a problem with his hand, he has still the strength to get a woman, to hit her, to rape her, and he also made Tom Robinson to confess that in what time he was basically arrested because he was having like a disorderly conduct. So Mr. Gilmer implies that Tom Robinson had motives right for always helping Mayela. Tom eventually declares that he felt sorry for her. He says that he felt very sorry for Mayela because she was always alone. Her father didn't help her. Her siblings didn't help her. She was alone all the time. So he felt very sorry. And then all the people were like, wow, why did you say that? Because it is never seen that an African American man or a woman feels sorry for a white person. So it is not supposed to be in that way. So Mr. Gilmer accuses Tom Robinson of lying about everything. And in this case, since Tom Robinson was an African American person, so people didn't believe him. They didn't believe that all the things that he said, even though he confessed the truth, but they didn't believe him, and they were believing the white woman. So in this case, because of the attitude of the attorney, Mr. Gilmer, Deal starts to cry because he feels that it is an injustice, right, to be accusing this man without any like proofs. So Jill Deal starts crying, and then Scott takes him outside, and Deal complains to Scott about Mr. Gilman and his treatment to Tom Robinson. So he says that it was not okay. So outside of the guardhouse, Deal and Scott returning to Mr. Dolphus, right? Raymond, a rich white man who has married a black woman, and he had mulatto children. So even though there was a lot of discrimination, there were people who were even having family. with African American people, right? So in this case, Mr. Dolphus Raymond, right? He was rich and he had a wife, an African American wife, and his children were mulattoes, right? And then they were outside, and this guy was supposedly to be drunk. He was like the drunk man of the, let's say, of the city, and people, they didn't respect him because they thought that he was drunk all the time. And he offers Dill a sip of from a drink, right? He had like a bottle in a box, in a bag of paper bag, and then he gives a drink to Dill. So Dill starts drinking, and Scott presumes that the drink is alcohol, but once drink reveals that he says that it is Coke. So, and then the man says that the Coke is the way to present an image, right, to the townspeople to provide an explanation for his lifestyle. So, he prefers that people believe that he's a drunk man, even though he's drinking Coca-Cola, for example, and he didn't care about this. So Dylan and Scott, they return to hear what is happening to Atticus, right, in the trial, to listen to his final remarks. And Atticus makes a personal appeal to the jury to spare the life of Tom Robinson, and he says that Tom Robinson is a good citizen. He has never given problems. He's a good guy. He helps people, and etc. But in this case, the prosecution has provided no medical evidence in both the evil testimony and the questionables. So he says that even right, the attorney, right, that he didn't like give real evidence about the rape. So, but in this case, just the physical evidence was support that's what Bow and Mayela said, right? And in this case, they didn't believe to Tom Robinson's declaration. So then he speculates that Mayela was lonely and depressed and welcome to visit Tom Robinson, right? But she then concealed her shame by accusing Tom of rape rather than admitting the truth. I mean, even Atticus was telling this, right, that Mayala was lying because of this situation, and she didn't want it to feel bad, right, and discriminated by the other people because she had a relationship with an African American boy. So, and Atticus pleads for Tom's life, right? He said, "Please help this boy. He is not guilty," right? And by that time, when the chapter is about to finish, Calpurnia enters to the courtroom, right? And Calpurnia is gonna say something to Atticus, and something important has happened in the house. So this is the end of chapter number 20. Later in the next video, we're gonna watch from chapter number 21 until the last one. This is gonna be the summary of chapters 11 to 20. Thank you so much for watching.